Welcome back. So the last time that I did a video about upcoming jazz vinyl releases, at least that wasn't a Record Store Day preview or it wasn't about the new Atlantic 75 series, last time that I talked about upcoming jazz vinyl releases was something like 3 months ago. And I do try to do one of these videos once a quarter. So just in terms of shining a spotlight, again, on some of these upcoming releases, really from a variety of labels to let you know what's coming up so that you know what to pre-order, so that you know what to preview before the release. And so I thought it was time to do another one of these videos. Now, I'm going to say something that, I don't know, I've been thinking about just a little bit, and I don't know if everybody else is of a similar mindset. It feels to me, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of exceptions, but it feels to me like there's not as many exciting releases towards the end of the year as there have been on any other given, say, couple of month period, right, that we've had this year. And here's the thing, I think, what this is what I've observed, and you probably observe this as well. Labels right now are trying to get rid of stock. Okay, so I'm sure that many of us have seen that Blue Note has been doing sales, right? 20% off, 30% off. A lot of their stock, even for brand new releases, ends up on Amazon for significant discounts, right? Whether it's the classic vinyl series, whether it's Tone Poets. You could get, what was it? There was like a Breaking Point by Freddie Hubbard. I think you could get for like $20 on Amazon at one point. There's a lot of deep discounts for releases that were put out earlier this year. And it's really, really interesting to see this in the vinyl industry because actually we're seeing it across all industries. It's just if you're only paying attention to vinyl, that's the only place you're going to see it. A lot of companies are trying to boost their revenue. I don't think there's many companies that are going to meet their profit expectations for the year. They're all trying to meet revenue. And so what they're doing is they're trying to get rid of unsold stock. And I've seen this across the board. We're talking about, whether it's Bandcamp labels. I say Bandcamp labels, you know what I mean? Like labels that predominantly sell on Bandcamp. Whether it's Blue Note, big labels are deeply discounting a lot of their merch. And it's very interesting to me to see that happen. And I think that a byproduct of that, this desire to meet revenue, get rid of unsold stock, is also that they don't want to invest in new releases. They don't want to have new stuff going through production and incurring all of that expense right now when they're trying to make their end of year numbers look good. Now, I am not in the industry. I don't know this. This is my observation. And whenever I see deeply discounted merchandise, that's what it says to me, just because I work for corporate America and I, kind of have an eye on these types of things. So it's interesting to see that in vinyl. That may be the reason why there's not quite as many exciting new releases that are coming out between now and, say, the end of the year. But again, there are some that are very exciting. And so what I want to do with this video is recap a couple of things. I've talked about Tone Poet calendar. I've talked about the classic vinyl series calendar. I'm going to recap a little bit of that. I'm not going to recap Atlantic 75. But some of these topics I haven't talked about since the beginning of the year when these calendars were released. So I'm going to tell you about what's still coming out at the end of the year, as well as some additional releases that I'm excited about that I haven't talked about before. So that's what we're going to get into. As always, before we get into it, hit like, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, and go over to Instagram and follow me at what_can_brown. All right, so in aid of this video being comprehensive, like I said, we're gonna rehash just a couple of those labels that I kind of already talked about some of these releases, but we're talking about months ago. I can't expect anybody to actually remember this stuff. So we're gonna make this video comprehensive, and I want to rehash Tone Poet, classic vinyl, just the releases for the next couple of months. We'll talk about OJC, and then we'll talk about some of these other labels that I'm excited about, like New Land and some other stuff. So let's revisit these Tone Poets first. So the first one is, and this is one that I don't have a copy of. I think that there's like a Japanese release of this thing. There's never been a reissue or even a release in the U.S., I think, and that is KB Blues. So I'm going to put up an image here. So this is Kenny Burrell's KB Blues. This is coming up on November 3rd. We're just days away. This is on Friday, and I'm a little bit nervous because Amazon is showing this as being released on November 3rd. Craft Recordings is saying, it's not Craft, I'm sorry, Blue Note is saying that it's going to be released on November 3rd. And yet Amazon is saying that the delivery date is like December 23rd. So I'm hoping that that is an error, or maybe that there's just been like way too many people pre-ordering it or something. I put in my pre-order a while ago, and I'm hoping that it's going to be delivered, this coming weekend. Maybe even this Friday, we'll see. But anyway, Kenny Burrell's KB Blues is one that I'm just super excited about. It's an early title for Kenny Burrell, but it's just one that we've needed for a long time, and I love this stuff that was shelved, right, that wasn't originally released and is now being released to the Tone Poet series because they do a great job. So that's one that is coming up just in a couple of days. So the other one that's coming up in a couple of days is really exciting. Now this one was one that was released originally back when around the time that it was recorded, and that is Easterly Winds by Jack Wilson. For those who either don't follow my channel or just don't know some of these, like, I guess, deeper cuts, if you will, in the Blue Note catalog, Jack Wilson is absolutely fantastic, and this Easterly Winds is certainly one of his most desirable. It may not be my favorite of his work. I actually really like Ramblin' on the Vault label. It's just a super cool title. But in terms of his Blue Note work, one of the reasons why this one is more, has more notoriety is because he's joined by Lee Morgan. You also have Jackie McLean, Garnett Brown, Bob Cranshaw, and Billy Higgins. This is a really, really exciting release. And gosh, like when I think about what the folks over at Tone Poet and Blue Note do with their releases, I think that this is just a stellar choice for inclusion in the series. And I may indeed have to get this one, despite the fact that I have it in this version. I may have to get a Tone Poet because I love it that much. So that's also on November 3rd. All right, so those are the two for November, right? And we're kind of on like a 2-a-month cadence with the Tone Poet series. So what are those two coming up in December? Well, first of all, we have McCoy Tyner's Extensions. This is coming up on December 1st that this is being released. There is a fantastic lineup here as well. I remember reading this. It's so funny. Getting like flashbacks to some of my earlier videos. And I remember reading the lineup on this. Alice Coltrane on harp, Wayne Shorter on tenor and soprano. You have Gary Bartz here as well on alto, Ron Carter on acoustic bass, and Elvin Jones on drums. This is a phenomenal release. For those folks who are Alice Coltrane fans, this very much feels like an Alice Coltrane album, and that's not to take anything away from McCoy Tyner. It just feels like from a, like cerebrally or something, that McCoy Tyner was on the same wavelength as Alice Coltrane, as John Coltrane, because of his experience playing with them. And this is just, it just really, to me, fits very well into that kind of body of work. So I think Extensions is a phenomenal title to include, and it'll be interesting to hear that in Tone Poet format. And then the other one for December, this is all we know about the Tone Poet calendar, which makes me think that here in November, I think we're going to get another update on the Tone Poet calendar for next year. So obviously, stay tuned to this channel because I'm going to be talking about it. Anyway, the other title for December is I Want to Hold Your Hand by Grant Green. This is a fantastic title as well, despite the fact that the title track is a Beatles cover. Grant Green can make even Beatles covers sound great. Who do we have joining Grant Green here but Larry Young on organ, Elvin Jones, again, on drums, and Hank Mobley on tenor. And yeah, this is a fantastic release. I love all Grant Green for Blue Note. And this is just a really exciting title, and I'm pretty sure it's going to sound great. All right, so let's move forward to the Blue Note Classic series. So again, just in a couple of days, coming up on November 3rd, we have a couple of releases, and those include Hank Mobley's No Room for Squares. This is a fantastic album. A couple of different lineups on this thing. So when you see the list of musicians, which include Lee Morgan, Donald Byrd, Andrew Hill, Herbie Hancock, John Orr, Butch Warren, and Philly Joe Jones, you're going to see some doubling up of instruments, and that is because, again, there's two lineups here across. I actually want to say that those recording dates span a couple of years as well. But even as it is, this album feels cohesive, and it's a great one. It's a great inclusion for the Blue Note Classic series. So The other one that's coming up on November 3rd in just a couple of days is Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers Mosaic. Now, I personally think that from a sonic perspective, this is one of the most exciting releases that Art Blakey ever put out on Blue Note. And I know that says a lot because there's just a ton of releases that he put out. I think that this is one of the best sounding ones, at least in its original form. And we'll see what happens, right, with the classic vinyl series. But here you have Freddie Hubbard, Curtis Fuller, Wayne Shorter, Cedar Walton, and Jimmy Merritt. Great lineup here. And yeah, I mean, here's the thing, for a lot of these classic ones, I'm not picking them up because I've got these original pressings, but I think that they're very worthwhile, and I get why they're included in the series. All right, so the next one, and this is a little weird because there's actually all these release dates coming up in November and December for classic vinyl at a very different cadence, right, than the Tone Poet. So this is also November, just 2 weeks later. This is November 17th, and you've got Wayne Shorter's Night Dreamer, Morley Morgan, Reggie Workman, Elvin Jones, and etc. is represented by who? McCoy Tyner, of course. So this is kind of interesting, right? So you've got at least at one time, the John Coltrane backing group of McCoy Tyner, Reggie Workman, and Elvin Jones here, and then you also have Wayne Shorter and Lee Morgan. So yeah, really great album here with Night Dreamer. I want to say that Wayne Shorter contributes almost all of the tracks on this thing, and a fabulous composer, and it's always great to hear his work, especially when he penned it. So the next one that's coming up on November 17th is actually the only one of these, at least in terms of the classic vinyl series, that I can't show you an original of, and that is because it's Tina Brooks's True Blue. And guess what? I've never owned a copy of this title in any format. And that says a lot because I am a completist when it comes to Blue Note, and I've been collecting for a while. In almost every circumstance, when I show you a record that's in the Blue Note catalog, it's an original pressing. Not in every circumstance, but in almost every circumstance. Tina Brooks, I don't even own a copy in any format, right? So I don't own any reissue. I've never owned any reissue of this title, and therefore I've been waiting for this classic vinyl series copy of Tina Brooks's True Blue, and I'll show you an image of this thing. And it's coming out on November 17th, so I'm excited for this title. All right, so that's that. Coming up in December, there's actually two more. We've got Grant Green's Green Street, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, I love anything Grant Green. So you've got Grant Green, Ben Tucker, and Dave Bailey. This is a rare occurrence where it's actually just a trio format, really allows Grant Green to shine here. I think this is a fantastic album, and again, on the 15th of December. And the other one on the same release date is Sonny Rollins's Nuke's Time. So this is a relatively early one. Who do you have in the lineup but Wynton Kelly, Doug Watkins, and Philly Joe Jones? Couple of folks with some Miles Davis cred right there. And yeah, this is going to be a fantastic one as well. Interesting thing about this one is that it's not as seldom, or it's not as common that in the classic vinyl series they include mono releases. I'll be very interested to see whether they actually have it as mono or whether they try to come up with something that's stereo. I'm actually not aware of whether this one exists in stereo or not. So I probably should have checked. I bet I could find that out if I searched online right now, but I'll leave that to you. All right, so now let's move on to the OJC, or the Original Jazz Classics reissue series. And the first one that we have coming up here, November and December, is coming up, I believe, on November 10th, and that is Jazz at Oberlin by the Dave Brubeck Quartet. Now, I don't have an original pressing of this one. I believe it was originally released on Fantasy Records. And I gotta say, I am interested to hear what this one sounds like, just because I think some of the recording techniques, especially used by Fantasy, were not necessarily the best. And so what that sort of calls into the question is, is the OJC series going to end up making it sound good? My guess is that it probably will, and it probably was even featured in a previous OJC series from, say, the 80s. And so and that's probably why they're dusting it off again. Anyway, remains to be seen, but if you're a Dave Brubeck Quartet fan, I bet that is going to be a good one. So otherwise, what we have coming up in the OJC series is, first of all, something that's been delayed for a little bit. This is supposed to come out earlier this year, I think around the same time as Waltz for Debbie, and that is Bill Evans' Sunday at the Village Vanguard. This is going to be a popular one just because I would say in the grand scheme of Bill Evans's recordings, I don't know whether to say this is the first or the second most famous. There's people who love all varieties of Bill Evans's recordings, but personally for me, Waltz for Debbie and Sunday at the Village Vanguard, which are both recorded at the Village Vanguard, and are very much sort of, complimentary releases. I think that these are some of the best. So this one is going to be very much in demand. Fantastic recording. And again, coming out on November 17th. I want to say this was slated originally for like August or something. And so it's really been a while that they had to push it. All right. So otherwise, in this same series, OJC series, one of the titles that's really going to excite a lot of people is The Cats. I hesitate to say by John Coltrane because the sort of spotlight here is very much shared between John Coltrane, Tommy Flanagan, Idris Suleiman, and Kenny Burrell. So I don't even really know how to sort of classify it. You also have Doug Watkins and Lewis Hayes in the lineup here on The Cats. This was originally put out on New Jazz, as seen here, and is being included again in the OJC series. And this is one that, got to be honest, my copy is not in the best shape. And I may indeed pre-order, even though I have not yet. So the other title that is also coming out on December 1st, it's going to be a big day for OJC. There's probably going to be a lot of people who are interested in getting each of these, and that is Yusef Lateef's Eastern Sounds, and this was originally put out on Moodsville, which is a Prestige subsidiary, and is being included in the series. Now, the kind of the crazy thing is, for me at least, and I think for a lot of people, is that this was included in the Craft Recordings small batch series, right? So if you wanted to spend $100+ on a copy, you could get it in the small batch series, and I think that was the first time in a while that it had been reissued, and so a lot of people jumped on it, especially because it was the Craft small batch series. And then here we have Craft including it in their OJC series. And it feels like it's a little bit kind of cheating us, or cheating the people who decided to drop all that money to then include it. I suppose the other way to think about it is that if you're the sort of person who doesn't mind spending that much for an audiophile release, then great, you have that edition and it's going to be probably better. But if you're on the other end and you just want to be able to hear the music and you want to hear a fantastic copy, and OJC has been doing a good job with these things, well, then you have a more budget-friendly copy. It's just that, in this kind of age of like everyone wanting to make sure they have the best sounding release of every single album, it's a little bit confusing for the same label to put out two versions and, not even like a year apart or something. And it like drastically different price points. So again, it's not necessarily their like fault, it's just a little bit of confusion. So what I will say is that I will probably make an effort to grab this in the OJC series, and I will compare it not only to the original, but also to the small batch, and then I'll sell whatever one I don't like as much, and I'll try to keep folks posted. But it's a fantastic title. All right, so possibly because the Cats, actually, I don't even know. I don't know why we have a third one coming out on December 1st. Maybe one of these was pushed, or maybe one of them is about to be pushed. I don't know. That's the thing, is that right now it's really difficult to count on release dates. But as far as I can tell, there's yet another title in the OJC series that's supposed to be released on December 1st, and that is the Tony Bennett Bill Evans album. I'll show it here. I actually do have a copy, but I started looking through my shelves and gave up because I need to refigure how I catalog things. That'll be a project for 2024. So fantastic album, Tony Bennett and Bill Evans, especially if you love, well, obviously Tony Bennett. This is being included in the series, originally put out on the Fantasy label, I believe. It wasn't Warner Brothers, was it? I think it was Fantasy. So this is somewhat unusual in that it's a vocal album, but it's Bill Evans, and he excites a lot of folks. And actually, I think this is a very worthwhile album. I'm probably not going to get it on the OJC series just because I have that original. I don't know how much more room for improvement that there is, but again, because it's vocal, maybe there is room for improvement. I don't know. I'm going to wait and see on that one and see what others think. All right, so let's keep this thing moving. So next up is Craft's Contemporary series, right? So this is Craft Recordings in partnership with Acoustic Sounds, and what they're doing is they're tackling the Contemporary Records label. Talked a little bit about this in prior videos, but basically what they're doing is they're kind of replicating a lot of the sort of techniques and partners that Acoustic Sounds uses in terms of pressing on 180 gram at QRP. These are all analog pressings. I believe both of these at least are done by Bernie Grunman. I think for the most part, are we talking about tip-on jackets? I think we probably are. So anyway, they're solid releases, right? And the interesting thing about these contemporary releases is that they're priced at the $30 price point, which is quite a bit lower than, say, the Acoustic Sounds Verve series or the Impulse series, etc. So anyway, these are a little bit more affordable. And the next one in that series that we have coming up is on November 10th. Again, priced at $30, and this is Portrait of Art Farmer. So who do we have on here but Hank Jones on piano, Addison Farmer, which is Art Farmer's twin brother, and then Roy Haynes on drums. So a quartet format. And this is fantastic. There's really great material on here, not only penned by Art Farmer, but also his frequent collaborator, Benny Golson. There's also something by, who is it? There's a George Russell tune on here who was always doing a lot of modal stuff, right? But in any event, recorded in 1958 and just fabulous music. I think this is a great inclusion, a great one to pick out of that Contemporary Records label and include it in this reissue series. So that's one on November 10th. And the next one is coming up on December 15th. Again, also at the $30 price point. And that is Phineas Newborn Jr.'s A World of Piano. So we have been treated to other reissues lately of Phineas Newborn. The one that comes to mind is that title that Vinyl Me Please put out that was originally put out on Atlantic, and that was included in their series. So I think there's some like renewed interest in Phineas Newborn and in his work. So on here, I mean, so get this, there's two different lineups. On side one, you have Paul Chambers on bass and Philly Joe Jones on drums. And on side two, you have Sam Jones on bass and Lewis Hayes on drums. Just really, really fantastic lineup here alongside Newborn. And the content here you have, it's like some bebop stuff, right? So he does a take, and this is kind of the sort of the speed of Phineas Newborn. He was airing a little bit more on the side of that earlier stuff. So here we have tracks that were composed by Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, Billy Strayhorn, Clifford Brown, Horace Silver. And then you have a couple of newer folks, Leroy Vinegar and Roland Alexander, right? So it's a little bit of a kind of a mix. This was recorded in 1961 though, and it just feels like it's a little bit leaning, to the past as well as thinking to the future kind of thing in terms of the compositions. And so this is going to be an interesting one. In my opinion, it may not sell as well, say, as some of the other Contemporary Records releases, but I think this is very much worth your time in terms of listening. And so it's something that I'm excited about. All right, so on the topic of Acoustic Sounds, they not only have their Contemporary series that they're doing in partnership with Craft Recordings, they also have their Verve series. And so how that's materialized recently is they've been putting out a lot of stuff by Oscar Peterson. And, like Night Train and We Get Requests, right? Those are a couple of those titles. So the next one they have coming out is Oscar Peterson Trio with Milt Jackson, and it is titled Very Tall. I actually don't have a copy of this, but it's coming out on November 17th. This is one of those that is mastered by Ryan K. Smith at Sterling Sound. From the original analog tapes, it's 180 gram, pressed at QRP. It does have the Stoughton tip-on jacket. So I think for those folks who are following Oscar Peterson and all these wide variety of titles that Acoustic Sounds is focusing on for the reissues, they'll know that each of them sounds just phenomenal. I mean, I want to say that one of my favorite reissue albums that was released over the last several years is that We Get Requests one. Just sounds so good. So I think that there's going to be a lot of energy for this one. I personally haven't heard the album. And I don't own a copy, like I said, so maybe this is that opportunity for me to finally hear it in this format. All right, so the next one I want to talk about is an actual box set, and I'm sorry, these are a little bit out of order because I'm trying to tackle, say, series, and now this is going to seem even weirder because this is a Craft Recordings edition, but it's a box set, not part of a series. Anyway, it is called The Complete Full House Recordings by Wes Montgomery. So what I'm showing you here is the original album that was issued, and this is a live recording. This was done in 1960 something, probably 2, 3, something like that. I don't know. I'm gonna have to I'll have to double check. But this is the original album that was put out, and what Kraft is doing is they've expanded this from a single disc to 3 discs. So they're going to include the original album, and then they have additional recorded performances, presumably also from the same sort of time period, possibly even the same, my guess is that it's at the same venue. Because there was that much content and they edited it down to just this, right? So what they're doing is it's a triple LP expanded edition that they're putting out. So the lineup here across all the content is Johnny Griffin on tenor, Wynton Kelly on piano, Paul Chambers on bass, Jimmy Cobb on drums, and obviously Wes Montgomery is on guitar. So what else about this? The lacquers were cut by Kevin Gray at Coherent Audio. It's 180 gram. It's being pressed at Optimal. And again, this is a in this series of sort of reissue box sets that Kraft has been putting out. And actually, I'm going to address this particular release in an upcoming video as well, so keep an eye out for that. So I'm not going to say as much. What I will say is that again is coming out on November 10th, and I'm pretty excited about it. The website, at least Kraft Recordings website, has it priced at I think $74. And funnily enough, they do say it's sold out. Here's the thing, is that Kraft seems to have a set amount of stock for their website that they will frequently sell out on, and then they make more available on the release day. And then you can also find this through other retailers, right? So other vinyl retailers, whether it's, I don't know, whether it's Amazon or Target or some of the big box, but also obviously some of the smaller shops, the independent stores as well, I think are going to be able to get copies of this thing in. So don't get discouraged if this is something that you want and you don't see it available on Kraft's website. That's the only thing that I would say about that. But like I said, I'm excited for this one. I love Wes Montgomery. I believe I featured some of the recordings when I was doing a WKCR radio broadcast earlier this year at Columbia University, and it was all on the Riverside label, and I believe I included some tracks from this. Just I'm a huge fan of this particular release and all of Wes Montgomery's work for Riverside. I think it is criminally underrated and underappreciated, and I would love to see all of it come out again in high quality format. So I am actually quite excited for this release. All right, so because I feel like I'm trying your patience, we're going to cover 2 more releases, and then I'm going to leave the remainder for another video that I promise I'll be recording within the week, and I'll cover some of the other stuff, right? So the last label that I want to address at the moment is Newland Records. So I've talked about Newland's releases in the past. They've put out some really great stuff, including, Nightlights by Jerry Mulligan. They've done some Bethlehem stuff by Charles Mingus, like just really, really top-notch stuff. What else did they do? Gosh, there was a Blue Mitchell title on Mainstream. There was Howard McGee on Bethlehem. Like, they've just been, small batch, kind of, small release schedule label, but everything they put out has been top quality. In fact, I even did a Dorothy Ashby box set review and kind of post that they put out as well. So seek out Newland Records if you can. They recently put out their release schedule through the remainder of the year, which includes 2 releases. And both are actually coming up on November 17th, and very excited about them. So the first one is the John Wright Trio, and this title is called Nice and Tasty, originally put out on the Prestige label. Who do we have in the lineup but Wendell Marshall and J.C. Hurd? This is just a fantastic piano trio album. I think that in many ways John Wright reminds me of Red Garland, but perhaps with more feeling, perhaps a little bit less I don't know, pop-y, if you will. Really, really great stuff. He also has Southside Soul that was put out on the Prestige label, and I know a lot of folks are looking out for that one at some point as well, but very excited to get Nice and Tasty included in this release schedule. So the details on this one is that it's mastered from the original stereo analog tapes by Kevin Gray, and that is very interesting because don't believe this has ever been released in stereo. I could be wrong. I know that it wasn't released originally in stereo. So when I saw that, I was interested. What else? This is printed and pressed at Palace on 180 gram vinyl. It is an officially licensed release, despite the fact that the label is out of the UK. It is officially licensed. I believe all their stuff, I think all the stuff on Newland is officially licensed. And like I said, it is out on November 17th and is priced at the $39.99 price point. So the other title that they're putting out on the very same day is another really exciting one. This one is originally released on Riverside Records, and it is by Kenny Dorham, titled Jazz Contrasts. So this is an older release for Riverside, and we have on this one, in addition to Kenny Dorham, we have Sonny Rollins, Hank Jones, Oscar Pettiford, Max Roach, and Betty Glamon on harp. I've talked about Betty Glamon before, and I always find it interesting when I see her in the lineup because her harp, she does a really, she played on a lot of these like earlier recordings, and it's almost unusual to hear the harp at that point because what is this? This is 1957, but always welcome. Always love seeing Betty Glamon in the lineup. So this is a fantastic album, and here's the thing. Anytime you're talking about something like this old on Riverside, by and large, you're not talking about having a nice copy if you have an original. Mine is not in the best shape. And so therefore, very excited to hear what Newland is doing with this release. So for this one, it is mastered from the original mono analog tapes by Kevin Gray, printed and pressed at Palace on 180 gram vinyl, just the same as the other one. It is also officially licensed, again, out on November 17th, and it is priced at $39.99. All right, so I know that we rehashed some of the stuff that I've covered in prior videos, especially the Blue Note, Tone Poet, and Blue Note Classic Series releases. I think that the rest were new that I haven't necessarily addressed before. So I hope this is beneficial for someone out there. I am going to record a follow-up video, and what I'm going to do is highlight some of those other titles that are coming out between now and the end of the year. Probably a mix of things that I just neglected here, but also some of the stuff that's a little bit more small time, a little bit more of the brand new release kind of stuff. So that's what I'm intending to do here. Again, just in the next like week or so. I already have a lot of my notes kind of drafted up. It's just that I wanted to keep these videos a little bit bite size. So I hope I did that. Thanks for sticking with me as always. And yeah, I guess I'll see you next time.